this for 3 minutes.
Okay. She's
Right.
going.
Setting my timer for 3 minutes. And you just stir this. This part isn't terribly interesting.
It's important.
And I try not to do too vigorous of a stir, otherwise you get lots of bubbles, and you can get the bubbles out later. It's just the fewer bubbles you have mixed in, the better. And I've got 3 ounces of each of the resin and the hardener in this, and this is Art Resin. This is all mixed now, and it's equal parts hardener and resin. And now I can start to pour. And I have a leveler here to make sure that each of these circles that I've got is more or less level. Depending on how big your piece is, if you have a really large one, you definitely want it to be much closer. But these are small enough that if it's a tiny bit off, it's not a huge deal. So, give that another stir. All right, that's the mixed resin. Now I get to do the pouring, which is the scary part. And I'm just going to pour that into the center of each piece. And this takes about, I think, 2 hours at least to really sort of begin to set. Actually, I think they say 45 minutes, but I've never noticed any noticeable setting in that time. Depends on your temperature. Optimally, you want to be about 80 degrees, I think is the best pouring temperature, but you can be a little bit off from that, just not too cold. If you get too cold, then the resin gets very viscous. And the warmer you are, the more your bubbles will come out as well, come out of the resin, which is good. You want it to all pop and go away. So I'm just pouring a little bit into each right now, and then I'm going to spread out the resin after. All right, so once I have a bit in each one, I'm going to spread it out.
So you're just making sure that it goes up towards the edge and curves
Yeah,
up?
I want to go all the way to the edge of these. And I'm actually using a fairly thin layer of resin for these pieces. I don't want them to be too heavy.
So the goal isn't for it to be necessarily
You
as
can.
level with the edge?
I like it to kind of come up over to the edge.
Okay.
And so I like to do that. And it's fluid enough that it just sort of flows back in, so it will be. Oh, you mean level as in flat with the edge of these?
Right.
Yeah, you can. I haven't been doing that.
Really, you're just sealing it with a nice layer of it.
A nice glossy layer.
Yeah.
And before I've done this, though, these are all watercolor paintings, so I had to seal with multiple layers of fixative spray first. And once that was thoroughly sealed, then I also did additionally a layer of acrylic varnish that was painted on with a brush, because I've found that bubbles start to form during the process of curing, even if there are no bubbles when I finish spreading this out. And the bubbles are because of any porous element. And even when it's been sprayed with fixative 5 times, there's still a little bit of porousness to the paper. So I found that adding an extra something will prevent bubbles from unexpectedly appearing midway through. Okay, So that is pretty much spread out. And I'm going to let that just settle a little bit. Also have to be careful not to drip your cup resin on anything.
Can you get, if it's still liquid, if you did drip it on something, can you get it off before it dries?
You can, although it's going to leave a tiny bit of a sheen,
Okay.
even if you wipe it
You
away.
wouldn't want to do that. But
Yeah,
just
you
in case.
mostly just don't want to.
Yeah. How much time do you have before it dries?
You actually have a lot. You have about 45 minutes before it even
wow.
starts to. And it's actually not drying. It's a chemical reaction between the hardener and the resin.
Okay.
So that's why it's the temperature, your room temperature is going to affect how fast that happens.
Sure.
So if it's warmer, it actually starts to set quicker. Mm-hmm. Although even at the warmest, I haven't noticed anything before the 45-minute mark.
Great.
If it's cooler, you'll have longer, but then sometimes you can have problems as well with it setting completely. So optimally, like I said, 80 degrees is where you want to aim for. I think it's like 75 today or something like that. I've done it outside too, and it set really fast when it was under the hot sun. But outside it has its own problems with lots of dust
Right.
and pollen and everything else and bugs that want to get immortalized.
Have you been able to get out?
I have. Yeah, you can pull them out with tweezers or with a little bit of wire, but again, you just don't want to do that if you don't have to. Kamikaze bugs. Okay.
I think you have a tiny little bit of a spot right there.
Yeah, that's going to settle out a little bit as well as it goes, but I try to make sure it gets, as long as it's on the spots, then it will smooth out. As it settles.
I can move it.
No, you're fine.
So I can definitely see why you'd want to do this in batches and not just, I mean, for all the mixing.
One-off, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially since you have to let it sit though for, so it starts to set in 45 minutes, but that's just, it starts to get a little bit sticky, tacky. It actually takes more like 6 or 8 hours before you can even move it because it's still going to be very fluid. And it takes a full 24 hours really to get to a point where you can touch it, and I think the directions say 48 total for the full curing. So it's slow. I think some other resins can be faster, but then you've got to deal with toxic fumes and things as well.
This doesn't really have much of a smell.
It doesn't.
A little bit.
Yeah. It's got, I don't really know how to describe it.
Not flowers like I said.
No, not quite flowers.
More like weird soap, sort of. Have you had any problems with it not flowing out evenly at all? That you had to do with, or no?
No, I haven't. Because the one thing I always worry about is it not setting.
Right.
Which is, I don't know if it's an irrational fear or what, but I did some little pendants with jewelry a while back, and I had one time where the resin did not set for no reason I could think of. It just stayed tacky the whole time. And so ever since then I've been paranoid that would happen again.
Understandable. understandably.
I'm going to circle around to that side.
Seems like it goes pretty quickly once you get going.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Have you done any of that?
And if you're not doing inset things like I am, then it's even faster. You just pour on something and take a big spreader and just even it out, and then you're done.
That's what I was about to ask. Have you done any of your watercolors with like that in that method?
No.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm concerned that without some really firm backing, that it might do some strange warping. Because these are firmly glued to wood on the back, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, one last little one here.
What gave you the idea to do these in sealing them with resin?
I wasn't going to do resin initially when I first thought about these. It was going to be just the an acrylic varnish, but this just seemed like a good idea. The varnish didn't seem like it was solid enough, especially with a paper surface. I mean, I've used that when I paint on wood or canvas, and that works just fine, varnishing it. But for these, it seemed like it wanted something else. Okay, now the next fun part. This is just a kitchen torch for making creme brulee and stuff. You can buy specialized resin artist torches, which cost about $50, or you can get just a regular kitchen one, which for any purposes that I could see looked exactly the same, for about 15 bucks.
Why would you buy that?
And it just has propane in it. So you turn that on. And this gets sort of bubbles. I don't know if you want to go close up on this.
Yeah.
This one's got bubbles, you can see. So I'm going to put the torch to it, and all the bubbles will just come up and pop. You can see them sort of popping on the surface. You get a nice clear surface then.
It's amazing.
So I'm just going to do that with all of them. Somehow I have resin on my hands. I'm going to go wash that.
Not good.
I'm just going to do that with all of them now. Just hit them with the torch. This one doesn't seem to have many bubbles. This one has a lot. more bubbles can form as it's curing, though that's going to be lessened by if you manage to make your surface as non-porous as possible, which is I did the acrylic sealer varnish before I mentioned it.
Makes sense.
It's a little piece of dust.
Yeah, I think you got a better angle right here. You can see, because from this side it's not as obvious. It definitely helps being on this side with the light behind it.
Light, good.
Yeah.
So there's dust. You can get those out with a little piece of wire.
Thanks.
I think that looks good. And then cover it all up. And then just let that sit for the next 24 hours.
Very nice.
I'll check on it. I check on it about half an hour in to make sure no extra bubbles formed. And if any new bubbles form, then I use the torch again on it.
Very nice. Yeah, so this one has a lot of bubbles in it, but those will all go away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can see it get all nice and glassy smooth as I do this.
Yeah, the ripples go away.